As today is the second day of our FDP, our guest has already joined. In the morning session, we have the expert, Professor Ravi Pudi Venkat Rao sir from SVNIT Surat, and he has enlightened us with his expert opinion and findings. So with this, I would now like to start FDP for the afternoon session. A very good evening to one and all present here. I extend a warm welcome to our eminent speaker, Professor B.K. Panigrahi from IIT Delhi, and all the distinguished participants. For today's session, the guest will be sharing with us his findings on application of PSO in solving engineering optimization problem. It's an honor and privilege for us, sir, to have you with us again. There's request from the participants to keep your mic mute and camera off. If you have any queries during the presentation, you can type them into a chat box. We'll take up your queries at the end. So I would now request Professor B.K. Panigrahi sir to enlighten us with his words of wisdom. Okay. I welcome you, sir.
Yeah. Thanks, Vandanaji, for the introduction again.
Thank you, sir.
Any delay, let me start the presentation. So I am sharing the presentation.
Yes,
I hope it is visible now.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what I understand, yesterday I was talking about the particle swarm optimization, which is one of the traditional optimization technique. And similarly, what I understand, what Bandana has already pointed out in the morning, Professor Ravi Pudi Venkat Rao has also given a talk, and I hope he has delivered a talk in the topic of teaching learning based optimization, TLBO.
Yes.
So into this PSO and TLBO, and you might have understood the similarity between these two approaches. Okay. The similarity in the sense, in PSO, I was talking of the global waste, which is nothing but the teacher, which is the best performance in a particular iteration. And the others try to follow the global best, because all other particles in the particle swarm optimization in a particular iteration try to improve its performance to take a new position closer to the optima or closer to the best performance. So that's why the same concept is given in the teaching learning based optimization, TLBO, in the name of teacher and learner. So a teacher, all my students should perform well. So all the learners should be having great importance, great achievement. Their performance should be greater. So every iteration, the teacher changes. Okay, the teacher may become sometimes learner, the learner becomes the teacher. So teacher only the one who performs well. So my point is, I'm not discussing those things. So I'm just discussing a particular point here. The non-traditional optimization technique, you will go for this technique whenever you require a search which is not traditional way, sequential way. It is a stochastic search algorithm. So to solve a optimization, to find a best solution in a stochastic manner, rather than searching in a sequential manner, we have that algorithm already developed. So now I thought, as this particular FDB program is regarding the soft computing techniques, I will give some now basic idea. Perhaps I have discussed this second slide, neural network fuzzy logic evolutionary algorithm, yesterday. Okay, so what I will now discuss about the application of this evolutionary algorithm to this neural network and fuzzy logic, and to solve some practical problem. So let us see what a neural network does. So if we look into this neural network, now you see there are certain number of inputs. That means so first question is, when I will go for this neural network? Because if you look into the engineering application, in most of the cases, the problem which you want to solve, the system upon which you want to work on is well defined. Well defined means the system characteristics, the system behavior is completely described by a set of mathematical equation. Okay. So those mathematical equation may be differential equation, may be nonlinear differential equation, nonlinear algebraic equation, linear algebraic equation, mixture of those. So when I can model my system mathematically, I can perform any experimentation on the system, given some input to the system, what should be the output? Because you know the modeling of the system, you know the behavior of the system. Okay. But sometimes the system is a black box, you don't know. So this problem arises in many engineering applications, which is known as system identification. You don't know what is the system, but what you know, a set of input given to the system, and corresponding to the input set of input x1 to x1, x2, x3 up to xn set of input, there are set of output y1, y2, y3 up to ym. So this is n number of input, m number of output. So to make it very simpler to understand, let us there are n number of input and only one output. So this input output pattern is known to you. So this is a pattern recognition problem. So now you know the system performance, given a set of input, what is the output? Now you want to know what should be the input given to the system. If there is a new set of input, what is the output? Okay. So unless you mathematical model it, you cannot find it. But I don't have anything to model. It is a black box. So now how the system can be identified, or how the relationship between the output and input can be approximated by a network structure. Okay. That means whatever I given the input to my brain, certain inputs regarding to the identification of a flower, that is in my brain. If I'll see a new flower, I'll try to correlate which flower is it. Okay. So that's why the basic idea of the neural network is, first thing, the training. You know the pattern. So to those pattern, you give the input. Then you assign the random weight from the input layer to the hidden layer. So this input, this let I is the number of input neuron equal to 1 to n. J is the number of hidden layer neuron, j equal to 1 to m. So these weights, which is demarked here, is n cross m. If there is only one output, then from these m neurons, there is m number of input to this. So the total weight in this neural network is n cross m plus m. Okay. So if there are, suppose in this particular case, it is 3 plus 4, that is 12 plus 4, 16, if there is only one output. Okay. So now these weights initially generated randomly. Now if you are generating randomly this weight, you give a input pattern for which the output is known, that is T1, the target, it is known. But what happens during the learning, what happens during the training, if this input is given for which the output is known, but because these weights are randomized, you will get a random output O1, which is not equal to the targeted output T1. So O1 is output, T1 is the targeted one at iteration number 1. So there is existence of an error. That error is T1 minus O1. So if you want your neural network should learn to this pattern, you want to minimize the error. Now the classic example which I have discussed yesterday, to minimize everything, we depend on the derivative. So you take the derivative of error, del of E, which is dependent on all the inputs, that is m cross n plus m number of input. Find out the partial derivative of the error with respect to each weight. So that means you are finding the sensitivity of each weight, how it affects the output. So once it affects the output, it will also affect the error, T1 minus O1. So that error is feedback, that error is back propagated. So this is a back propagation learning algorithm. So what I will do, if I have P number of pattern, every pattern having 3 input and this particular case, so give pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3 up to pattern P. Then again come pattern 1 to pattern P. Every iteration wise go on. So that is basically pattern based learning. Or you can do the other way. One pattern is iteratively learned in the error is within a threshold. Then the second pattern is learned. Then the third pattern is learned. So that is a sequential way of learning. Either it is a pattern-based learning or sequential-based learning. Okay, like if I am reading in a particular semester, there are 5 subjects. It may happen that I learn the subject 1 by spending 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours till I understand everything. Then go to 2, then go to 3, or I go chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3 of pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3. So these are the different methods of learning. But the basic idea of the neural network learning is twofold. You want to minimize the error. To minimize the error, you have to update the weights. If the question now arises, can I apply evolutionary computing technique, PSO, GA, teaching learning based optimization, whatever we have discussed yesterday, for the neural network? So the guess is yes, we can. Okay, now I'll come to how this is done. So this is very simple. One thing is the architecture of the neural network. So as I'm telling you, the architecture you know partially. For example, you know the number of inputs, I1 to IN, or X1, X2, X3, or X1, X2 up to Xn. You know the number of output, Y1 to Yn, M. But for a particular structure, you don't know how many number of hidden layer will be there. You don't know how many number of neurons will be in the hidden layer. So these things, there is no hard and fast rule. But there is a thumb rule. If the number of input neuron is, let us n, at least the number of hidden neurons will be greater than n or equal to n, not less than. That is just a thumb rule. But whether it is n or n plus 1 or n plus 2 or n plus 5 or 2n, I don't know. So that's why that is one challenge. What should be the optimal structure of the neural network? Because I am giving you 2 ideas. You know one subcomputing tools, that is neural network. You know another evolutionary computing tool, that is your evolutionary algorithm, non-traditional optimization. Can you merge? Can you collect these two to a new research domain? So that is the thing. Because as a researcher, what do you want? You want to create new problem and to solve this new problem in a tactical way, in a different manner. Okay, so that's why I have done the classification by using neural network. We have done the regression or forecasting using neural network. But can I apply the evolutionary computing to the neural network to have an optimal structure of the neural network? That means what is the best structure so that my neural network will give better learning, better classification accuracy. That is number 1. Structure optimization. Number 2 is, you know that every hidden neuron in this hidden layer or every hidden neuron in this hidden layer is having a transfer function. So what happens generally? All the input, now you see, this is suppose I1 multiplied weight W1, I2 multiplied with this weight, In multiplied with this particular weight, they are going. So every input multiplied with a weight is coming to this particular node. Then there is a bias. Then the summation of all the input plus bias is based on a activated function. So now this is X1 Wi1 plus X2 Wi2 plus X3 Wi3 plus X4 Wi4 likewise plus bias B1. That is nothing but A1. Similarly, you will get A2. What is the input to this? A3. What is the input to this? So once you get the input to the hidden layer, every hidden layer is having a transfer function. So that transfer function is also a challenge because there are many transfer functions we know. I'll come to that. Either it is a linear transfer function or it is a non-linear transfer function. But which transfer function is best one for your learning process, for your problem? So that's why this is another challenge, the selection of the transfer function. Similarly, I'm not going to this slide. So now I am posing the problem in front of you. The problem is the structure optimization of the neural network. So if you want to the structure optimization, it can be done by the sequential learning method and it can be done by the stochastic process, random optimization. So how it is done in sequential learning? Simple. Because the more the complicated the structure is, I can give you here is a classic simple example. Even if class we
बस से भैया आएंगे ना तुमको लेने
please make your mic mute.
Yeah. So
अभी तो दोबारा में भैया नहीं आएंगे लेने तुमको?
Excuse
So
me,
what happens
participants are
actually?
requested to make your mic mute, please.
What happens generally in the case of the neural network?
Yeah.
See, in class 3 or 4, we have done very simple fill in the blanks. Suppose I'll tell to my kids, okay, fill in the blanks, 10, 20, 30, will be happy to fill in 40 and 50.
तुमको याद ही नहीं रहा क्या?
Because in this particular case, this is very simple structure. But if I'll make a little bit complicated,
मैं
like
इससे
1,
अपना पेयर करके
4,
सुनूंगी। नहीं हो रहा ना, इसे
1,
तो
4, 9,
दूसरा
16,
डायरेक्ट हेडफोन से
25,
सुनूंगी।
dash,
मैं तो
they will
होशियार
tell
नहीं
it is
बनूंगी।
36. So now the question is, it is a linear
इसमें अच्छी
approximation
आवाज
or
आती है।
non-linear approximation. So depending on this
कौन
type
सा
of
गाना तुम गाई?
which is linear approximation or non-linear approximation. So if your problem is a little bit complicated, there is a non-linear relationship between the input and output. So what you can do, you can construct a neural network in a constructive method. So what is the constructive method? You start with minimum number of neurons in the hidden layer. Okay, look into the performance. If the performance is not improving, if the error is not reducing within tolerance limit, now you go on adding one neuron to it. So you start from a sapling and end up with a tree. So this is the constructive method, but remember it is a incremental method or deterministic method. You are going adding one by one node. Okay. The other way you can do pruning method. You start from a larger structure of the neural network, see the performance, then gradually go on cutting down one neuron till the optimal structure is fine. But these two are very simple classical method. Now when exactly the searching yesterday I was discussed, maybe Professor Ravi Pudi Rao has been discussed. So instead of a sequential learning, cannot I go for a optimization tool where the number of hidden neurons will be randomly generated? There is a minimum number. So suppose you have a particle or you have a TLBO, teaching learning size. So number of learners, the number of learners are 1 or 2, let us 2. 1 will give you number of hidden layer, 1 or 2 or 3. So you generate a random number between 1 or 2 or 3. So the random number is 2, there are 2 hidden layer. Then 2 hidden layer corresponding to the number of hidden neurons. So you generate a, let us you fix the number of neurons will be between 20. So generate a random number between 10 to 20 because 10 is the input. That's why I'm telling 10 to 20. So let the value is 15. So first hidden layer is having 15. Second, it is 12. Second hidden layer is having 12 neurons. So this is one chromosome. This is one particle. This is one learner. This is one ant which is generated. So that is a neural network structure. Give your input, train it, then take the second random input. Same 2 layer. First random generation between 10 to 20, 18. So 18 neurons are there in the first hidden layer. Next, 13. 13 will be second. Third, 12, 18. Fourth, 15, 15. So likely you have generated 10 particles. 10 particles means each particle is responsible to create a particular neural network structure. For every structure you evaluate. Find out what is the efficiency, what is the learning rate, what is the error. Now out of all these, whatever structure is giving less amount of the error, that is the global best. So I'm just telling the way. So instead of sequential learning, you can apply your evolutionary computing technique to evolve the structure of the neural network. This is a new research domain people are carrying on, and we call it evolvable neural network, where the structure of the neural network is evolving. The second one is there are in multi-layer perceptron network MLP or probabilistic neural network PNN or any type of neural network you are using, there is a certain parameter that is learning rate, which also influences the learning rate, also influences the speed of convergence, the learning. Because similarly, the weight, because the weights are initialized randomized. If it is initially randomized, now how these weights are updated? Just now I have told you, the weights are updated based on del E with respect to del W. So when I'm taking a derivative, this is a gradient based learning. This is the traditional optimization way to minimize the error. and it is applicable if the error surface is unimodal, which I have discussed yesterday. That means you have a sphere function, only one minimum. But remember, I have already given you an example. There are n number of input, m number of hidden neuron. So n cross m plus m number of weight. So if you will plot, all these weights are changing between 0 to 1. And all this dimension you will plot with respect to error. The error surface need not be unimodal. The error surface may be multimodal. So now the question is, why should I update the weights based on the gradient information of the error? No, I can update the weight by a non-traditional optimization. So that's why the PSO, the differential evolution, the genetic algorithm, the TLBO algorithm can also be used to update the weights. So I have given one problem solution to you. You can update the structure. Now you can update the weight also. So I'm just putting you some problem domain which can be useful to all of you to carry out the research in those areas. Now let us see, this is the final one. The evolution of the topology, the structure you can evolve and leave the transfer function constant. Because I have told you that every neuron is having a transfer function. But generally by thumb rule, we take all the transfer function, all the nodes in a hidden layer having the same transfer function. Assume that, but evolve the structure. Otherwise, you can take different transfer function for different neuron. You can number this transfer function. For example, unipolar sigmoid is 1, bipolar sigmoid 2, hyperbolic tangent 3, radial basis function 4, sigmoid 5, heaviside 6, step function 7. So there are 7 type of transfer function. Which function you will take? Again, the very classical example I have already given you. This is the way actually how you have to make the program. That's why I'm telling. So when you are generating now a chromosome or a particle, so in the particle what are unknown? The unknowns are the number of hidden layers. So you assume there are number of hidden layers 5, 1 to 5. So generate a random number between 1 to 5. So that may be 3, that may be 2, that may be 1. Similarly, each hidden layer, how many number of neurons? Similarly, each neuron, what will be the transfer function? So now in a string, you have all the parameter which defines the structure of the neural network. That's why the important thing, you can evolve the topology, you can evolve the transfer function, you can evolve the weight. So ultimately, you can evolve the optimal mix of the transfer function. So this is one way where the neural network structure can be optimized. Besides that, I'm not sure whether it has been discussed regarding this multi-objective optimization or not. So in a multi-objective optimization, I will just give you a brief idea here, whether it is a multi-objective GA, we call it NSGA, non-dominated sorted genetic algorithm developed by one of our very close friend, and we are proud of him, that is Professor Kalyan Mohadev. Okay. And this paper is very, very highly cited across the world. So the question is, when you go for multi-objective optimization, the multi-objective optimization is classically, you can go for it whenever there are two objectives and both the objectives are contradictory in nature. For example, I will give you a simple example. I want to purchase a car. So when I want to purchase a car as a customer, I want the cost of the car should be minimized. And simultaneously, I want the comfort of the car should be maximized. See, these are the two objectives which move in the opposite direction. If the cost will be minimized, you go for any ambassador or whatever, and the comfort will be minimized. If the cost is maximized, you can go for Mercedes-Benz, then definitely the comfort will be maximized. But as a customer, I want no. Minimum cost, maximum comfort. Similarly, in electrical domain, people like Dr. Chaturvedi and others, so they have solved the problem, the emission minimization and fuel cost minimization. I want to minimize the power production cost by burning the coal. Okay, and so if you want to minimize the cost of the power, simultaneously you want to minimize the CO2 emission, carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, NOx emission, sulfur SOx emission. Okay, these are the pollutants which emits from the thermal power plant. then definitely the cost will go up. So emission is reduced, cost will go up. Cost will reduce, emission will go up. And the third example I can give you, as an investor, somebody want to put money in the market. So if you want to put money in the market, everybody wants you should get more profit or more return. But remember, you will get more return from certain bonds, but the risk involvement is very high. But as a customer, I want, no. I want maximum return with minimum risk. It is not possible. You can get minimum return with minimum risk, go to the post office, deposit your money. You can get maximum return and the risk involvement is very high. You can go for any particular bonds. So that's why the point is, when it is a multi-objective optimization, when I have two objective F1 and F2, both the objective are moving in the opposite direction, people go for multi-objective optimization. Okay. So here in the neural network structure also, I can go for multi-objective optimization. I've already given you one application of the single objective optimization. So what is the multi-objective optimization? Now you can see, you can go for a simpler structure of the neural network. If you are going for a simpler structure of the neural network, then definitely the complexity of the structure is low. The time taken for the learning and testing is low. The memory requirement or the computational burden is low. But in that case, the accuracy, the error may be a little bit high. If we will go to a neural network structure which is very complex, that means more and more nonlinear approximation you have made, more computational burden, more complexity of the network, more time it will take for the execution, then in that case, you may get a better accuracy. So now it depends on you in which application you are applying the neural network. For example, you are applying it for a medical diagnostic problem. If you are applying to a medical diagnostic problem, okay, in that case, the accuracy is a concern. You want to achieve high accuracy. Time is not an important issue. You may spend 1 hour, you may spend half an hour to take a diagnostics. Similarly, in forensic science, in forensic evidence, there are different features. I want to train a neural network, whether a crime has happened or not. So in that particular case, the decision should not be taken in a day, in an hour. It may take long time. So if accuracy is a concern, I may go for this particular solution. But in some cases where I can compromise the accuracy to some extent, but time is a concern. For example, the online control of the missile or online control of any plant. So you can't take, I will wait till a final control action is generated, which is minimum. The system may go to unstable. So here time is a constraint. Within certain time, you may not have an optimal control action, but you may have an suboptimal or nearer control action. So you want your neural network to be input a very quicker one, maybe with some amount of the error. So that's why it depends on the user, whether the user will go for a Mercedes-Benz or the user will go for some other car having less comfort. Okay. So similarly, whether you will go for high return, high risk, or you will go for medium return, medium risk. So that's why instead of giving a one solution to the user by means of this multi-objective optimization, which is known as Pareto-based multi-objective optimization, you give the user a set of solution. Now the user has the freedom to choose which solution is suitable to him or her. That's why you see a set of solution is given to me. A set of neural network structure is given to me. Depending on my application, I will go for any particular structure. Okay. So this is another application of that. Now, besides going to the fuzzy, if time permits, I'll come. I am coming now one application where we have done some epileptic seizure detection. So for this epileptic seizure detection, now you see, you have to put these electrodes on the head. Either it is a 16 channel electrode or it is 32, 64, 128 electrode. So every electrode is given a signal. So now this is the signal. Okay. So once you are getting signal, then ultimately what you want? You want a diagnostic. Okay. Whether there was a epileptic seizure or not. Okay. So basically this is a classification type of problem based on certain signal. Now you may extend this particular idea to any of the classification problem, like condition like fault monitoring of a motor. So you take the current signature, you take the voltage signature, you take the vibration signature. So these signatures are nothing but the sensor output. So every sensor, whether it is a voltage sensor, current sensor, vibration sensor, whether the sensor is put on a human body, ECG, EEG, muscle signal, okay, or it is obtained from a machine, or it is obtained from a power system, the voltage and current for the fault diagnostics, forget about that. So now I have some signatures. So from that signature, now signature when I'm talking of, the recording may be done for a minute, for an hour, even sometimes for a day. So how to know during that particular day or hour or something has happened? If either you have to go through all manually by the naked eye, sometimes it is not possible. Sometimes it may create confusion. So that's why I need some soft computing approaches for the classification purpose. Okay. So these subcomputing approaches are enlisted here. So first thing, when you have a signal or when you have an image, you may take image. We are doing some work on fMRI, okay, magnetic resonance imaging. Either it is a MRI image, so there are slices of the image, or it is a signal. So forget about if somebody is interested in signal processing, they can go for that. If somebody is interested for image processing, they can go for that. So whether it is a signal, whether it is an image, now this is a raw data to me. Okay, so as a mathematician, the signal is a one-dimensional data. At various instant of time, you have a magnitude of the signal. So ultimately, it is an array of numbers, real numbers. If it is an image, it is a x, y dimension. Each pixel on the image is having a coordinate x and y. So either it is a two-dimensional in the case of image, or it is a one-dimensional in the case of signal. So now I am coming to the signal processing or image processing. So you apply suitable signal processing or image processing technique to the acquired images or to the acquired signals to extract the important hidden information in the signal or image, that is to extract the features. So feature extraction by applying suitable signal processing or image processing tools or techniques to the acquired signals or images, okay, is one of the important tasks in classification problem in fault diagnostic. Whether it is fault diagnostic in human body, fault diagnostic in electrical vehicle, fault diagnostics in any of the motor, fault diagnostic in any of the machine. Clear? So now I have given one step. Now these signal processing, there are vast amount of signal processing tools and techniques. You have Fourier transform, you have short time Fourier transform, you have wavelet transform, you have Hilbert-Huang transform, you have S transform. There are many transforms. Similarly, for image processing, you have discrete cosine transform, you have Gabor filter. There are different type of even if wavelet also you can apply. So I am not going into detail of each algorithm. Everybody may be expert in one or two algorithms. But my understanding, as far as you know, that by applying this signal processing technique, so a large dimension feature set, okay, because in the dimension, what happens in the image or what happens in the signal, you have large amount of the data. I don't want. That is reduced to a number of feature set. So I will tell you how it is reduced now. You have a signal, then in the signal, there is the EEG signal, there is also sometimes the tremor signal, they are added up. So now from the signal, you extract the feature. Once you extract the feature, then these features are taken to a neural network. These features are taken to a radial basis function neural network, support vector machine, extreme learning machine for the classification purpose. Okay, so that is the simple thing here I want to do. So what exactly we have done here? We have taken two data sets. One data set is from University of Bonn, from 10 to 20 international electrode placement system. There is 5 normal patient, 5 epilepsy patient. So you have two class here. One class is normal, another class is epilepsy. Okay, and this is the sampling frequency of the signal obtained. Similarly, the second data set, we have taken our collaboration with AIIMS and Neuro Disorder Center, where the neurology and sleep center data we have taken, and here 3 normal and 3 epilepsy patients. Then here we apply certain feature. That what feature we have applied before applying signal processing technique? The signal processing technique is wavelet decomposition. Basically, just to tell in one sentence, the wavelet is basically filter bank. Because when you are getting a signal, the signal composed of many frequencies superimpose each other. So what we try to pass that signal through various band pass filters. Like again, I may tell you in class 4, 5, 6, whatever you have done. Suppose you are bringing muddy water from the pond and you want fine water, pure water. So you pass the water through pebble layer, then sand layer, then charcoal layer. Okay, so what happens? Larger particle will be filtered away, further smaller particle will be filtered away. So like way, so the water is passed with different layers of filter having different cutoff frequency. So by that, I am now obtaining the feature. Feature at level 1, feature at level 2, feature at level 3, feature at level 4. So these are the feature sets. You can look into these feature. So these are feature for some. These are dot. Now see, no seizure. So that means the green one are having no seizure. The plus one is having epileptic seizure. Okay, and this one a little bit. This one is also having no seizure. So if you look into this class, now all the class, there are some classes which are having confusion. So every classifier, when you give the data during training, so how will you do it now? Suppose you have 100 data set. Okay, out of this 100 set, you may 70% use for training. So now you train the neural network. So number of input are nothing but the features. So the number of features you are getting are the number of input. Number of output is 1. So the output is either 0 or 1. The 0, no seizure, 1 seizure. So this is a n number of input. Each input is a feature set or the one feature. The feature set is having 10 input. You perform a neural network structure, perform the training, have the learning. Once the learning is perfect in 70% of the data, another 30% is taken as a testing. So either you can use 70-30, you can use 60-40, you can use 50-50. So you can have a neural network structure. Again, you can have neural network learning, etc. by applying evolutionary computing techniques. Okay. So exactly here I have just plotted one feature versus the other feature. So that means this is not a linearly separable data. If the data is linearly separable, two classes linearly separable, then you can have a hyperplane. You can create a hyperplane where the data are linearly separable. But here these data are highly nonlinear. So if the data are highly nonlinear in the feature space, you are not getting a plane which can separate this data into distinct classes. Then you may have to transfer this data from a low dimension to a little bit higher dimension, which you do in case of the support vector machine. A simple example is a XOR gate. In a XOR gate, you are getting 1 in the 2 corners, 0 in the other 2 corners. No plane can separate these two. So if you have to transfer it to a higher domain, then you may get 2 separable data. So we create a kernel. In support vector machine, we call it kernel, a hyperplane, which transfers the features which are non-separable in a particular dimension to a higher dimension where it becomes separable. Okay, so again, main objective there is to create that hyperplane which will equidistant from both the classes. So there is also optimization can be applied. So the optimization can be also applied here. Who tell you these 10 features are best feature? Because when you are making a classification problem, sometimes some features are redundant. I don't know which feature will work best. For example, let us I want to classify between a cow and a dog. So unfortunately, the cow has 4 legs, the dog has 4 legs. If I take leg as a feature, number of leg as a feature, okay, maybe some dog has broken leg or one dog has missed because of some reason, but that is a misclassification. Sometimes it will give you, but this is a redundant feature. In all the cases, the feature is common to everybody. So why should I take this feature to the neural network and unnecessarily one more input is there? So that's why in some cases I know, at least I know in these cases, to distinguish between a cow and dog, legs should not be taken as a feature. But when I'm making a classification problem in this epileptic seizure detection and I'm taking certain frequency component as a feature, I don't know which frequency component are dominant in epileptic seizure, which are not dominant in epileptic seizure, because here you are taking the data from a variety of patients. There are men, there are women, different age group. So all these things are there. Okay. So some are already having some strokes, some are not having strokes. So in every case, these are the different. I want to make a robust classifier. So the number of input feature selection where you can also apply the evolutionary computing technique. Rather than going one by one adding the sequential features to see the performance of the neural network, you can have the neural network structure evolve through this particular algorithm. So that's why this is another idea I have just given you. And here we have made the, I'm just these features I am showing because all these features are, you can see here, these features somewhere are very clumsy and they interfere with each other, thereby reducing the classification accuracy, whether it is a normal or whether it is a seizure. So coming to this, another simpler way of this classification is k-fold cross validation. What is this k-fold cross validation? Because when you have more number of classes, some classes are having large number of data. For example, I am taking a simple example. Let us, I have 10 classes. Okay. Out of these 10 classes, 9 classes are having, each classes are having 110 number of data. So total number of data is 990. But unfortunately, one particular class is having only 10 number of data. Other class 110 data, only one class is having 10 data. Now if we will mix all this data, that is 1000, and you randomly select 70, it may happen that in the random selection of 70 from the very rare class which is having only 10 number of data, okay, only 2 or 3 data will be selected. So now what is happening? You are selecting 70% of the data, but from the rare class only 2-3 data is selected for the training. So 7 or 8 data are now for testing. So you attend 2 classes only and give the test. So ultimately you will fail because my data set is not uniform. There is a very rare class of data. So that's why people go for k-fold cross validation. So what you will do in the k-fold cross validation? Now you can see all the data are divided into packets. So now there are 10 classes, 100 data, 110 data. So you make 10 packets. So now for the all these 9 classes, A1, B1, C1, D1, whatever, like 9 classes, all the packet is having how many data? Because I'm making 10 packets, 110. 10 means 11, 11, 11, 11. And here each one is 1 data. So now what we'll do, take 9 packets together. Last packet is for training. So when you will take 9 sets together, so aapka already 9 of the rare class, each packet is having 1 data, will come for training. So packet number 1 to 9 is taken for training, 10 is taken for testing. Then 2 to 10 is taken for training, 1 is taken for testing. 3 to 10 and 1 taken for training, 2 is taken for testing. So this algorithm you run k times. K means fold, k means basket. You have created 10 baskets. Each basket, each class data is put equally. कभी कभी इक्वली नहीं हो सकता है, 1 2 इधर उधर हो सकता है, not necessarily 110 each class data, कहीं 115 हो सकता है, कहीं 105 हो सकता है, but you try to evenly distribute in all those packets. So this is known as lambda fold cross validation or k fold cross validation. So at least you cannot end up with a scenario where the training is done with less number of data and testing is done with the large number of data. So this thing we have done in this particular one. So once I am getting, then we have made classification of this epileptic seizure. Then this is one application area, epileptic seizure detection. This is your training accuracy. You can see these are the features. So once I am taking a signal processing, the output of that, we are taking energy, entropy, RMS value, mean value, standard deviation, maximum peak, kurtosis, skewness. So either you take one feature, find out the accuracy, or you take all the 112 feature, find out the accuracy. So why I'm giving this? You see, if you are taking 112 feature, imagine your neural network structure is having 112 number of input neuron. So even if you are taking one hidden layer, the hidden layer is having, let us, more than 112, 120 number of neurons. So the matrix, the number of weight will be 112 into 120 plus another 120 from one hidden layer to output. So the neural network structure will be very complicated. What is the guarantee? If you are taking all the feature, you are getting a better accuracy. Maybe some of the feature like the maximum peak is redundant. I don't know. So that's why here there is a challenge. What should be the optimal feature set you will select? Instead of sequential learning by random learning, by applying any of the evolutionary computing tool, so that the classification accuracy of my epileptic seizure detection program software is maximum. We have developed a software, and our software, we have patented it. It is under testing in different labs in different neuro disorder center. Okay, so I am giving you just one example of this. So here you can see performance and testing accuracy. We have taken, for example, you see, this is the all feature is the blue one. This one is skewness is having minimum, because, and these are multiple wrong, because if you will make training testing ratio 10%, 90%, 90%, 10% in everywhere, but here also you are getting 3 value. Because why 3 value? This is the minimum accuracy, this is the maximum accuracy, this is the standard deviation of the accuracy. The lower this gap is, for example, the lower is this bar, every time you are getting almost the same accuracy. Here the accuracies are different. So this can be plotted as a box plot. Okay, so now you can see which one is better. Of course, all features are not better. Some other combination of the features are better. So that's why you can have an optimal feature selection strategy to have 100% accuracy. Okay, so these are some statistical. This is sensitivity to your performance. This is specificity to your performance. Okay, so these are the some application area of the neural network where you can apply your evolutionary computing tool. Another application I'm just giving, the forecasting. We do a lot of forecasting. When I'm talking of the forecasting, either it is load forecasting in electrical circuit, or you are forecasting what is the dollar price tomorrow, or you are forecasting when there will be what is the monsoon rainfall, okay, in a particular season. So that's why when we are making forecast, this is a time series forecasting. And this time series forecasting is based on a time series data. So you prepare a time series data, you prepare a history. Sometimes it is univariate, sometimes it is multivariate. For example, what is the difference between univariate and multivariate? If I am forecasting the electric load demand, only looking the previous history of the electric load demand, this is a univariate. But I know that the electric load is dependent upon humidity, the electric load is dependent on the temperature, the electric load is dependent on the season, the electric load is dependent on the holiday or working day. So if I have many factors putting on that, then it becomes a multivariate forecast. So you have to prepare the data as per that. So the classical method of the statistical method of this is autoregressive moving average, ARIMA, autoregression integrated moving average. So these are the classical time series forecast methods. People go also for ANN based model like neural network, fuzzy logic, extreme learning machine, support vector machine, etc. But the challenge in this forecast is you have to forecast the value y at time t plus h. So the load at time t plus h is dependent on the previous load yt. The previous load yt means 1 hour before, yt minus 2 hours before, yt minus 24 1 day before, yt minus 25 1 day and 1 hour 25 hours before, 25 hours, t1 minus 68 1 week before. So that's why you have to make the pattern. So creating the database for the learning is very, very important. Many times the researcher, they fail how to create this database for the, because you have a data, for example, the load data for a year, and the load data is given to you on annual basis. So the total number of data given to you is 24 into 365. So how to prepare this data? So data preparation is very important. If you are preparing the load demand, now what you will do, you just separate this data into 3 seasons: summer, rainy, winter. Then every season again separate the data to the holiday and weekday. Now you prepare the data. So you have a forecast season wise, you have a forecast holiday wise and working day wise, and the data are prepared accordingly for a better forecast. So it is not that easy to have a forecasting. Actually, the data preparation is very, very important. As already I have mentioned you here, one thing here, I'm telling you. Now, suppose you are predicting the P. P may be power, P may be price, P may be monsoon, rain forecast at time T. So this depends on the data T minus 1, T minus 2, T minus 24, T minus 25, T minus 168, T minus 169, T minus 337, 336, 337 like way. So you give all these input, predict for PT. Then you have another set of input till PT and till from these two, slide the window. So go on sliding the window and this data will come as a sequential learning to your neural network. So this is one of the important aspects. And now again here the optimization is what should be the feature you should take for a better classification accuracy. Not necessarily whatever the input pattern you are thinking is good. So here I may combine what is the temperature at T, T minus 1, T minus 2, T minus 24. Humidity, T minus 1, T minus 2, T minus 3, T minus 24. So I am making a large string of the input vectors. But prediction is not for weather. Prediction is not for temperature. Prediction is for power only. So I am predicting the power at time T based on the previous power demand, previous temperature profile, previous humidity profile. So that's why this is a challenge, how to prepare the data and what is the optimal feature of data. Another challenge is, so here just the model development I have told you. So to predict a PT, we have taken T minus 1, T minus 2, T minus 3, T minus 24, 25, 48, 49. This is 50, 168, 169, 336, 337. So this pattern is given, it will predict PT. Okay. So likely you have many patterns from the known set of data. Now you give the unknown set of data, predict what is the actual value. That is the validation. Okay. So you have training, you have testing, you have validation. Training, testing is done on the known data. The known data you separate as a training set, testing set, like I have told you, 70%, 30%. But another simple research here, sometimes what happens here, if we look into this particular time series in black, so the time series is very uncertain. It is quite fluctuating. So instead of predicting it alone, if I can decompose it by means of a wavelet into a simpler form, that is approximation, and some detailed form, now what I'll do, instead of predicting this alone, you predict each individual. Predict this, predict this, predict this, predict this one, and predict this one. The final is added to the final prediction. Now you may ask the question, why I'm making the things complicated? I'm not making the things complicated. I'm making the things simpler, because if there are more number of uncertainties in the system, it is highly nonlinear, prediction is difficult. So what exactly I'm trying to do? I'm applying the wavelet so that I can get a smoother version. That is nothing but a trend. Trend is generally, you know that in a geographical region, the minimum demand is fixed. Then there will be up and down depending on the working day, holiday, humidity, etc. But at least there is a trend. There is a trend in the monsoon. There is a trend in the wind speed. So that trend, it is mostly a repetitive one in nature, which can be predicted by a simpler tool. You don't have to go a complicated neural network structure. So you predict each individual, add it for the final prediction so that your accuracy will be increased. That exactly we have done here. You can see. First, your signal is decomposed, one approximation, then the 4 detail. So that I have shown you here, one approximation, and these are the 4 detail, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what exactly you are doing? You are predicting everyone by an algorithm. Not necessarily everyone is a same neural network. So different structure you are implementing for predicting, you add up for the final prediction. You may get a very, very good, better result. So we have done it. This is another way of carrying out the research in this particular domain. So this is just one idea I have given you, particularly how to combine the evolutionary computing algorithm and the soft computing algorithm for prediction, for classification, for enhancing the prediction accuracy, for enhancing the classification accuracy, how to determine the structure of a neural network, optimal structure. Remember, again I am repeating, a particular structure you are getting which is giving high accuracy, it depends on the particular problem which you are solving. It depends on the problem, it depends on the complication. So here we have done, if you are increasing the number of nodes, what is the error, everything. I'm not going into the result more discussion, because you can see many papers published by us or published by any group, so that you can have a rough idea about how this. So this is a new area people doing research on the evolvable neural network. The neural network structure, the neural network weight, the neural network feature selection. So classification can be applied by this particular method. So anyhow, I want to conclude here. Now it is open for the question answer. Yeah. So here actually, as already told you, here we have shown you some accuracy. You can see MAP. MAP is an indices for the forecasting, mean absolute percentage error. So the mean absolute percentage error for level 1 prediction, level 2 prediction, level 3 prediction, level 4 prediction. Similarly, we have tried a different transfer function, sigmoid, sinusoidal, hard limb transfer function. We have tried a different number of hidden neuron. Okay, so why I am showing this? Because you see the performance are changing depending on this. So ultimately, I am giving you an idea of the optimal structure. You can find out the optimal structure. So here, training period. Here, node, how many node you will take? Here, MAP. So you can see this is a multimodal type of thing. A particular structure will give you better MAP. That means for a particular number of node, for a particular training period, for a particular transfer function, you will get MAP. So this shows you the importance of the evolutionary computing algorithm, because this is the error surface. Okay, MAP. I want the MAP should be minimum. So this is a minimization. You see some cases this is up, down, up, down. So this is a three-dimensional surface. Clear? So that is the main idea. So these are the result also we have shown you, actual and forecasted. So I'm not going into all these detail. And some uncertainties can be taken care in the forecasting by fuzzy, by other methods also, because every forecast is uncertain. No forecast is 100% accurate. So this can be carried out incorporating fuzzy. So my main idea, whatever I discussed in the very beginning of this particular slide, how to combine the neural network, fuzzy logic, evolutionary algorithm to create a better machine learning tool. Okay. Yeah. Now I am concluding. I have the questions, please.
Okay, participants can ask their question.
Have they typed? They typed. I don't know.
They can chat also. Okay, type your question here in the chat box. We'll take up your question.
Dear participants, you can now unmute yourself and ask questions. If you wish to ask, please, you can unmute yourself.
There are 7 charts.
If you don't have any doubts, it means
Okay.
sir has explained everything very well.
Okay, sir. I'm not getting any questions in the chat box yet now. Okay. Okay.
See, I have not given mathematics. I have not given any high-fi mathematics for the. I've given you just some thought of research. You can carry on this research, because I always believe all the researcher, all my students are more intelligent than me. They are very good in programming. I am not good in programming. So once you get the thought, once you get the idea, you can implement all this into a real problem solving. If you are doing any classification problem, regression problem, forecasting, or whatever you are trying to do, but you should get some idea how to combine it.
Yes,
How to,
yes, sure, sir.
I have given you the idea how to code it. Sometimes people do not know how to code it. Okay, because you want to a structure, all these parameters are random. These random parameters are coming from the PSO. You run your neural network algorithm, go back with the error to the PSO, do the PSO operation there, again come back here. So you have to maintain that flow. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.